Hello everyone and welcome back to the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. I'm Raven and joining me is Sottle, of course, and we are already on to our match number 3. So for you regular viewers, you need to make sure you stick around because this day might be over quicker than normal for us in Europe. But we do have a cool match coming up. It's going to be Viper versus RDU, and both players have gone 3-0 so far today. Rogue for Viper did all the heavy lifting, and then RDU had some close calls, but managed to take it with his Priest 3-0. Oh, Sol, we're in interesting territory here. Viper's Zoo is available to play for him, and Druid has been banned out by RDU, so Viper doesn't have Druid, but he has Bomb Warrior and Zoo. What are you thinking here?
First thoughts, wow. Was not expecting that. Was not really expecting to see Druid bans at all at this point. I think, from the Kael'thas nerf, and I think, things were going that way anyway. Viper actually made a hot take on sort of day 2 or 3 of the expansion, maybe, saying that Druid would be a tier 3 deck within a week, but honestly, he wasn't that far off. I think it was firmly cemented as a tier 2 deck by the time the nerf to Kael'thas even came in. And now, obviously, most builds of the deck have got a little bit weaker with the lack of Kael'thas, so then you could argue it would be very surprising to see that receiving a ban. But Viper's lineup is very unique, and Last Hero Standing is very different from what we're used to seeing with particular Conquest lineups. So RDU clearly identifies a weakness for himself there. Very curious.
Yeah, and there's one thing to note as well is RDU pretty much came up on Last Hero Standing, right? That was his format for when he started, really putting in the results initially. And when we first started hearing about RDU, the whole game, all the tournament formats were really Last Hero Standing. So, he's made his success off the back of this exact format. So even if we don't necessarily, have our heads wrapped around, the bans as they happen, I'm sure RDU, might even give us some answers after the fact, maybe later today. Is it wrong?
I'm going to stop you before you dig this hole any further, but yeah, I think we just had a graphical error because looking at the actual match tracking sheet, it's a double warrior ban as far as I can see on there.
That makes more sense.
I imagine with how confusing I did find that Druid ban, that is probably closer to reality.
Yeah, I can agree with that. All those things I said do ring true. RDU, out of all the formats, has probably done the best during the Last Hero Standing, season or time, but yeah, the Druid, okay, that makes more sense for me. I didn't want to call RDU crazy for having Highlander Priest and leaving Warrior up, for example, as some of these other matchups, but I felt it. But yeah, we are back to normal.
I was
here.
about
Double
to do
Warrior
it.
ban.
Literally, I gave the sit on the fence kind of answer initially, and then you probably saw me look to the side where I was checking through RDU's deck list, trying to find any reason why you'd ban Druid. Couldn't find it. Was about to go in for this being a stupid decision, and then checked the sheet and was like, oh no, I think we just have a problem here. It's actually a double warrior ban.
Makes a lot more sense. We are going to see the Druid from a Viper on the top here, and RDU kicking it off with his Mage. So funnily enough, the two classes neither of these players have had to play yet today are going to get involved in game number 1 here. And even though, Saul, as we get into the post Mulligan, I thought this matchup was super interesting. What kind of impact do you think the KT removal or nerf? Some players are playing it, but what do you think impact do you think the KT removal has done for this matchup? Because Viper is actually playing the Malygos list.
He is, yeah, which a lot of builds didn't necessarily play the Kael'thas in the first place. They just relied on Omu as their kind of mana cheat option of choice. So arguable to say that this deck from Viper hasn't changed at all. But I do think in general Kael'thas is a pretty powerful minion in the matchup against Mage, because a lot of big minions, Mage can just Ray of Frost, generate a Frost Nova, Brain Freeze, Frostbolt, whatever it ends up being, and just deal with it later. Whereas Kael'thas, particularly if you were to land it with Survival of the Fittest, say, if you're playing the survival build, you just land it on board, it has to die. They have to kill it. They can't just leave it there. They can't just Ray of Frost and put it on the later base. And that's very, very hard for them to do because they generally don't really play hard removal options for big minions like that. So I do think it's a very useful minion to have in the matchup. But since Viper is playing Mali Druid, his deck, I would argue, is largely unaffected by the Kael'thas nerf, since a lot of the builds were going without it anyway.
And here are the options here. There is Coin Bloom into the Twilight Runner, and honestly, looking at what's available, it's a little bit scary, but not so bad, because with the there's an Arcane Missiles technically available, but to do that, it would require, at least for now, a ping on the 1/1, which then means there is only Arcane Missiles to try and snipe this runner. I don't know if that's still worth it, and you'll probably call me crazy for even suggesting it, but
you feel good at winning 4 50-50s in a row, Raven?
Sometimes you've got to make the plays, Sol.
All right.
But what this does, seriously, the Viper committing to this play, one, sets up some removal, of course, with the minion, but also draws some cards. But most importantly here, for RDU, he has an expected huge window, right? Yes, the minion's probably going to be able to trade something off, but he has almost a whole free turn once you get rid of that trade.
Yeah, which is a big deal. And I've talked a lot, both sort of like privately in testing with the other casters and some players that I've been jamming some games with, and also on air, about how I feel like Lightning Bloom is overkept. And even though it is a high win rate card, the difference between it and the highest win rate card in Overgrowth and Guardian Animals is so enormous that you should look more aggressively for those. But from what I've observed of Mali Druid players, who are generally better at the deck than I am, because I've barely played Mali Druid, I don't trust the deck at all, is Lightning Bloom is much more favored early in Mali Druid, like favored as a keep in Mali Druid than it is in the other builds of the deck. And you saw there Viper kind of sticking to that philosophy, playing Mali Druid, kept the Lightning Bloom in his opening hand, played it early. Because I think Mali Druid, by its build, if it falls behind and it's under pressure early, you're dead. Like, the crystal powers aren't there, the iron barks aren't there, the recovery mechanisms just aren't really there. So I think being able to get out nice and early is a pretty good idea. More so in Mali Druid than it is in the other builds.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and it's one of the things we talked a lot about in that first week as well. Just having those early aggressive options just ruining Mali Druid. But for now, RDU does have kind of the free turn to consider. He does get to develop some more minions on board and get his Arcane Intellect going as well. So although he can't cast it this turn, he is slowly piecing together a pretty solid Mana Cyclone option, and maybe even not next turn. There's a chance he could go Arcane Intellect to create an even bigger hand and then go off with the Cyclone. But for now, once again, we're showing the respect that Malygos Druid has to give any fairly aggressive opening. Is he's the Moonfire gone, swipe gone, just to keep the board clear. I think it might be more likely that we're going to see just Ysero being on board as the bigger threat, and the way Viper might go for winning this game. Even just the straight bog beam there is enough, because it does mean RDU has a whole lot of nothing on board. But this might be the turn now, with Sorcerer's Apprentice, Cyclone, Magic Trick, and the Mana Giant in hand. This could be a setup. Whoa. Okay, that surprises me. I guess here, the Mana Giant setup for RDU is pretty strong. To be fair, actually, RDU has seen a lot of removal come out with that swipe, with that hard cast Bog Beam. Then this Giant is exceptionally safe, and then a Solarium Prime to back that up with. RDU might just be seeing the gap in the opponent's armor here. Viper's in trouble. Is this just going to be a Germination play with the Moonfire? I have mentioned before that Forest Warden Omu often acts like an Anubisath, in that it's just a lot of the time a free body whenever you don't combo it in something crazy with the Omu into like a big Malygos turn. This is decent, but with the Solarium Prime, there's a chance that the Prime here from RDU could just clear off these minions and he gets to hit 8 for face, which would be absolutely huge. Or with the Ray of Frost pick up now, I was just going to say, slightly more likely this is going to be the big pop-off turn. Ray of Frost, an additional 2 spells if RDU so chooses to cash in there, and the Mana Cyclone to finish it off is going to be huge. Icicle, dealing 2 damage, can help clean this up and create that card draw. Viper, is in trouble. He needs the Guardian Animals next turn to do something absolutely huge. Oh yeah, that'll do. The missiles clearing this off. Nothing too great, although the Learn Draconic is just a nice secret to keep the pressure high. There is the Raz Frost Whisper, and now I didn't even see that it was cast so quick. The counter spell to lock out the Guardian Animals is going to be back-breaking for Viper here. RDU got the counter spell. The Guardian Animals have been stopped dead, and that is just a ton of damage. That's going to be game. RDU takes game number 1 with that Mage, and absolutely insane getting that counter spell off the Mana Cyclone there. As you can probably tell, Sol's just fixing something. So, I am not talking over him or anything, I believe anyway. So I guess we're just going to check out RDU's lineup and what he has left here. He is going to be on this Tempo Mage once again, of course. So it is actually Viper that's going to have to switch off since this is last hero standing. So Viper with his Druid gone, I believe has his Rogue or his Zoo to lock in, and hopefully we get to see the Zoo plan out. I think it might actually be the Rogue play here. Might be a little bit better, but again, I will confess I've been playing some Zoo myself, and my score's not bad, but I don't have a lot of practice versus this Mage from RDU specifically. So I'm not 100% sure how the minions will perform with all the potential freezes that are available here. But just a reminder, this is the winners match, which means the winner of this does go on to the top 4 and will play on Sunday. It does get a day off in the middle, of course. Whereas the loser will go on to face the winner of will be Yala, and who was the other player we actually cast? I'm actually forgetting now. It was Yala and Casey, of course. So there's still a chance for these players to survive even if they do lose this match. Look at RDU's Tempo Mage. Still within that one Conjurer's Call in. The one Firebrand really is the big question that I have with the list. The Firebrand feels so good, and Sot and myself were talking a lot last week in the amount of times we saw it as a Tempo Spider tank with an upside get played, and it was looking quite strong. I am surprised it was a cut, but I'm no Mage specialist myself. Whereas it does look like Viper is going to go for that Rogue, not really relying on the Zoo list to help out versus Mage. And on the basis level, I'm sure Subtle will dive into the actual how the last hero standing back and forth might play out. But for me, with just the Ray of Frosts, the Brain Freeze, and cards like that, and being able to just spot remove some of the key minions from Zoo, I do think it is probably just a good decision for Viper to go for this Rogue. So, looking at the opening hands here for our game number 2. Can't imagine RDU will want to keep too much of this. Probably looking for some of the better opening tools or even some of the spell damage minions. Whereas Viper, never sure with Weapon Rogue right now. I'm always tempted to just full mull for a weapon unless there is a stealth minion, and then you want to keep it to try and prop this Greyheart Sage. Viper seems to be taking his time over this one. It's tough because Greyheart Sage is such a great payoff card if he can just get hold of anything that's stealth. Which, just checking on the list, it is running the double Spy Mistress, double Worgen Infiltrator, double Sneaky Delinquent as well. So there are 6 cards early on with stealth he can get that will proc off that Greyheart Sage, and he also has a couple more turns to draw them as well. So I do actually like this Greyheart Sage, and he did get the Self-Sharpening Blade as well, so it's absolutely huge. It can just get that cooking and a secret passage. This might be one of the best opening hands I've seen for a while with this list, actually. No need to fish for the weapon for Viper.
Hello, do you hear me? Am I back?
Oh, you want to clock in for the day's work, Sol?
I know. I actually decided
to put in some effort, mate.
To show up and cast some Hearthstone. Incredible, isn't it? Yeah, sorry, I had some pretty severe technical issues. I'm used to moderate technical issues, but we have hopefully recovered now. What have I missed? Yeah,
so basically RDU won. So we could go through that quickly. It was a counter spell that he got off his Cyclone to lock out the Guardian Animal turn that Viper needed on curve, which was insane, which just locked the game out. I was just talking about Viper probably not picking Zoo into this matchup because it might be tough with the freezes and spot removal. But here, so far, Viper kept hold of the Greyheart Sage in the opening hand and was at least rewarded to an extent with Secret Passage and Self-Sharpening Sword as his mulligan draws. So looking pretty good here, but RDU does have options with this Firebrand plus X in the near future to maybe ping off some stealth minions.
Okay, pretty strong pickup there. Was really spent a large amount of that turn doing not very much, but I think the cram session pickup at the end pretty clutch. Mana Reservoir on board, very, very difficult to kill, even if an aggro rogue could kill it. Probably feels like a waste of time to sink 6 damage into this thing, so suddenly that makes the cram session payoff pretty appealing.
Yeah, and I don't want to say this is unfortunate for Viper, because his hand is pretty good, but he kept the Greyheart Sage and nothing else, and he hasn't ran into any of those 1 of 6 stealth minions he has in his deck, which means it's just not quite getting the draw payoff yet, but I do think the passage will discover that.
Right. Job's done. So yeah, RDU going to go all the way through here, drop his coin to make sure he's going to get max value off this cram session. And there is the juice. RDU finds himself a Sorcerer's Apprentice to be able to put together some huge pop-off turn of his own. So this matchup is about to go pretty crazy, it looks like, because both of these players now kind of have the gas on their side. Viper with Cutting Class, Secret Passage, Steel Dancer, Greyheart Sage with Stealth Minion, basically all of the most powerful things that his deck can do. RDU now cycling hard and finding the Sorcerer's Apprentice, so well on the way to the most powerful things that his deck can do as well. So there's going to be some fireworks over the next couple of turns.
Right, and where do you think the priority goes here for Viper? Because he could just kill off the 2/2 and play Steel Dancer, and a 4/4 and a 3-drop is very heavily winning board right now. But you've just seen your opponent draw a lot of cards as well. So do you think he might value the draw package a little bit more than the board presence?
It's weird, right? Because I don't think you need all of these cards to draw. You do have to pay attention to tempo soon enough, right? Like, you're not going to need 2 cards from Greyheart Sage, 2 cards from Cutting Class, and 5 cards from Secret Passage. You're just not. So you need to kind of find some way to parcel that out that makes sense. It might involve just getting the weapon big and getting the free Cutting Class down, more so than going with the Greyheart Sage and Secret Passage. So, all things considered, yeah, I like your line.
Not a bad 3-drop to get either. It is just more stuff, I guess. Not the most powerful immediate 3-drop, but good amount of health there. I was wondering whether there was just the Worgen Greyheart play, because it made a board and drew you cards, which is the one thing the 2 other plays didn't really do. I think naturally you'd snap for Devolving Missiles in this specific scenario, but Mirror Image against Rogue is quite good. I think that's the pause here for RDU.
I agree. It is devalued a little bit by the fact that there is just these kind of irritating small minions on board, but you can Ray of Frost your way through most of this. It's just the fact there's 2/3s hanging out. They're just going to go for the double freeze instead of killing one of the minions. I guess this makes sense, yeah. With the mirror image as well, I think this line gives you the most protection.
And as well, he does have that Firebrand in hand for next turn to, help out pinging off some damage on some minions too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of why I was curious about whether it would be double Ray into the 4/4, because then, you'll be able to clean that up with Firebrand on the following turn as a 1-health minion. But I think RDU is just maxing out on protecting his Sorcerer's Apprentice this turn, in which case, yes, allowing 0 attacks on the board is more likely to do that than the alternative.
Wow. Viper can make a bit of a board himself as well now with the double Dread Corsair. He has the Eviscerate to clean up this Apprentice, which again, you mentioned it like RDU was setting up to defend the Apprentice at all costs, but an Eviscerate cares not for Taunt.
Blood and plunder.
And this is a monster board coming down, and nothing got generated off this Cyclone that's going to help RDU out with this. He is miles behind on tempo right now.
And I think that the Secret Passage in hand makes this play even stronger, because Viper knows that RDU has X amount of generated Mage cards. Any AoE that is relevant would cost his whole turn. Let's say, oh my god, what's the name of the card?
And reflect.
The big rolly fireball.
Close enough, yeah. Rolling fireball.
Oh, there you go. I wanted to say Mage here then. I was like, that's just not in standard.
No.
But yeah, any like actual like AoE that would pay off would use so much mana that then Secret Passage can just refill the board anyway.
Yeah.
It would give RDU a relatively slow turn. So I do like this here. It's Blizzard though.
Yeah, it's Blizzard that's a turn too late to be solving this problem, though. It is a very nice tempo swing next turn, because it will also complete the Learn Draconic for him.
I'm calling the turn. Okay, it doesn't matter. He's not going to do it. I thought he was going to just Secret Passage into Dr. Krastinov, because every time I've seen one played, it's just on perfect. Oh, I've got one durability. Let's call the doc.
Yeah.
A cruel fate awaits you in the
He's going to go for the Sage. Oh. Never too upset to see a Van Cleef. I did wonder whether Viper's actually feels forced into that Sage because the Worgen's down and he probably wants to swing with it this turn.
Yeah, it's curious, right? His hand is very weird now if this Secret Passage doesn't help him out with something else to get a second weapon rolling.
Right.
The remainder of his hand really doesn't do a great deal if he chooses to attack this turn, which he certainly does not have to.
Although you say, the Blizzard's a little bit late, which I do agree. It would have been nice for RDU to clear up a good chunk of this board with Blizzard. That helps with Blizzard to stall, and now the Ras.
Yeah. I did mention it's huge here as well, because he gets the 6/6 off the tempo swing from the Learn Draconic, which is a pretty insane 1-2 punch to be able to get back some tempo. A little awkward because Raz next turn is a end of turn effect, so it's not like you can just Raz away all the taunts and then kill the Edwin with your 6/6 to really solve the problem. But between Raz and your Arcane Missiles and Ray of Frosts, you do have a pretty clean-looking answer to this board state next turn.
Yeah, I mean, just Raz Brain Freeze, right? Keep it simple. Yeah, that's perfect. And the fact that this board is so full, on one hand, normally great for Viper in this position, because the freeze didn't actually kill the minions, that's kind of a positive for RDU right now.
Yeah,
because Viper can't rebuild the board. I said the whole reason Secret Passage was so good is that if the board gets cleared, he refills with Secret Passage. If it doesn't get cleared, he hits RDU in the face. Well, RDU's found the way to make neither of those things happen.
And it does block the way for the Secret Passage this turn as well, very irritatingly for Viper, because he could just Secret Passage there and just rip into a bunch of cards that he'd have no board space for and just waste the whole thing. So I think, on reflection, Viper plays the only real turn he could that turn, which is just deal with the 6/6, play the only minion that made any sense. As you mentioned, Brain Freeze and Rare Frost, I'm going to clear this up.
Job done.
Wait. Well, if he'd have Brain Freeze the Edwin, it would be dead right now, right? And then there would be a 3/2 frozen on the board instead of a 6/3 frozen on the board?
No, this is better because it would have buffed Viper's weapon. Remember, it was the Volpera.
Sure. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Viper would have actually had a weapon swing. This looks weird, but it's correct.
Yep, my mistake. I am stupid.
Agreed. But we are going to see the power of the passage as Viper gets to actually do stuff this turn, because without that one card, you can see why Rogue is even being played because of this card, right? Without Secret Passage, his turn was pretty much nothingness and lose. So this is actually giving him options. The cutting class is going to allow him to keep those cards, and 2 Spy Mistress against a Raz that he can't kill.
I mean, you might as well, right? It's not like it's a draw that's getting better for you later on.
Okay, I guess.
It was going to disappear. He doesn't get to keep it, so the only reason he's playing it is because he doesn't want to top deck it later. He's just playing it now.
Right, yeah, I think, yeah, I definitely understand. I was just trying to work out whether, does he need it based on his deck size? But does he actually need every card to try and hit face.
Sure.
I don't know. It's just what I was trying to think about there. 'Cause
Sure.
he has pretty much just gone, discard this card, right?
Yep.
Observe and reflect.
Maybe he thinks to be fair, he might think the Raz just has to trade. I just feel it's so unlikely with RDU's hand so big.
Yeah, there's no way you expect that thing to trade against like a 7-card tempo mage hand, I don't think. I just don't think that's a realistic proposition.
Job's done.
RDU now very comfortably in control here. There is a lot of damage still stacked up, potentially coming back the other way. But Viper has to find a way to deal out that damage while preventing damage coming through himself. This is a pretty appealing sap turn, because not only is there a problem on board that he doesn't really want to be throwing damage at, it will also burn a card from RDU, which is largely insignificant, but not entirely insignificant, let's say.
Yeah, I honestly think the main restriction here, or what Viper has to work out, is that number next to the 4 on his weapon is how many turns he has to win the game, basically.
Yeah.
Because he has to swing 3 times, almost certainly, to win this game. Can he survive long enough to even do that? And that's what he's trying to piece together now. What gets him to 3 whole turns worth of swings in this game without losing?
Choose soon.
With that Raz, like, not a lot, because nothing really sticks. Jandis sucks versus Raz. The 2 Scarabs don't do great. He still has the Spy Mistress, so he is going to swing into it. Throw it off.
And then just go max tempo, I presume? Is it the... No, I was going to say, is it the Jandis coming down alongside this? It's not. He goes with the Abyss instead.
Shadows.
I think with this, Viper's saying, okay, you generated your Blizzard, you've used it, you know, a bit of Ray of Frost, you've used a Brain Freeze. Like, hey, do you actually have enough removal to keep doing this? Because I think Viper's just banking on the fact that RDU doesn't.
Sure. Not sure how wise that is against a full card mage.
Don't give people that name decks new ideas, Sol. Sounds like a terrible archetype name, doesn't it?
Does a bit, yeah. Kind of a whiff on the power of creation. I'm not sure whether we can accurately describe that as a whiff. Like, they're great minions, but they don't have rush, they don't have taunt. Those are the really impactful things that RDU would have wanted that turn.
Yeah, what, gyros being the dream?
Yeah. Gyros, Sunwalkers. Rush probably just about superior, although even then they're only going into 1/1 taunts, I guess. So maybe it wasn't that impactful.
No, but the Wind Fury, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I was just saying like
and then
Rush
the
in
4/4.
general. Like you are
Oh,
right.
sure,
You are
sure.
right. The gyrocopters were nutty for exactly that reason.
Right, okay.
I
There is
wonder.
Krasnov as well, and you've got to think, is Krasnov almost like throw away Krasnov to an extent to get 2 extra damage, I guess, over the 2 turns? Does that work out? I know it'll be 3 turns if he has durability, but I'm just saying the immediate future. The damage does start to stack up.
RTU, sorry, Viper fully committed to just seizing board here. Full trading essentially through a can, which, you know, way back in the day, it was one of the first things that the aggro players really had to get a handle around when every control deck had a can in it, is that you never traded into the can. You just started chipping damage to the face. Oh, Frost Nova and Frostbolt?
Frost Bolt.
Why do you spoil me like this, One Thief?
I would say this card's almost good enough to put in your deck.
Is it cold in here?
Shenvala, Frost Nova, missiles.
Missile, yeah.
And then just evocation to prop? Is that the plan?
I'm okay with it. I think RDU's saying here, like, swing your weapon into a minion, I dare you. You know, because that's just so much less damage.
Ooh, rewarded for the good order. Gets the clear and holds a Frost Nova.
Wow. And this is it now. This Jandis probably has to be magnificent.
What makes something real?
The problem right now is the 2 swings of the weapon don't actually do enough damage.
Nope.
And those are not magnificent.
There's just 9 and a fireball coming back the other way, as far as I can see it.
Right.
I wonder.
Viper can stew and debate all he wants here as to what the line is, but it's all a formality. He, of course, doesn't know that. He would have no way of knowing that. The hand is largely created by on RDU's side right now.
Right, and I do think there were some tough calls throughout, honestly, the majority of this game of Hearthstone by Viper.
Yep.
RDU, I think, played pretty well, but I think Viper had all the hard calls to make here, and it just didn't quite pay off in the end. Although I do completely respect the whole, well, this is what I've got to play with. Chuck all the minions on the board. He saw a Blizzard, he saw the Ray of Frost kick out as well, and maybe you do just have to say, you know what? He's not generated 5 AoEs, right? You know, like that's I guess the assumption you might have to make at that point. It was a tough one, but it does mean that it's Viper's taking his loss on his rogue, which means he's only got his Zoo left, Sol. And this is so annoying for me because I don't mind this Zoo list. Sol hates it, and now Zoo loses. So I was like, yeah, I told you so. Wasn't good enough.
I mean, yes. What else do you expect to happen? Like, I don't know why you're presenting that as an unreasonable thing to occur.
I've got a funny feeling Zoo could lose one game and you'd be like, yeah, it's trash.
Yeah. I mean, no, but genuinely, like, I don't know. I think I was, like, fairly balanced of it in my assessment. Like, my testing of the deck reports that it does not have a high enough win rate to bring to a tournament like this. There are many explanations for that. I might just be getting unlucky. I might not be drawing enough dark layers. I might not be playing the deck well enough. But in terms of the matchup spread, I do think that if your testing reports that the deck is okay and it's performing 60%ish for you, the matchups that it's supposedly good against, that does make sense for you to bring it to a last hero standing tournament. It could potentially be a good sweeper deck against someone's lineup that is relatively well expected, with, you know, slower Druid, Priest, X, where that X is also, you know, a 50-50 plus matchup for the Zoo. So I'm certainly not, like, outright against Viper bringing this build of Zoo to the tournament. It's certainly not my least favorite build of Zoo that he's ever brought to a tournament. And I could see it putting in some work, sure.
Is power.
Yeah, well, what is going to be interesting, of course, we go into game number 3 here, is because of the way Last Hero Standing works, if Viper does take this win, which I think might be the hardest one for him to take, he does have RDU's sort of, I don't know, like the stealth rogue, I guess, to try and beat down, which I can see it doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Highlander Priest, in which, again, I think the regular 2-of Priest has a much better game of it versus Zoo, because you just have access to twice as many of the good cards versus Zoo. So there is a chance, but I do think this might be the tester. But if there's ever an opening hand you want for Zoo to win a game, it's nigh on this one exactly from Viper. Whoa! Insane. And for those of you who don't know, the main beef behind this Zoo list is the Dark Glare, along with Raised Dead, 0 mana hero powers, and Flame Imps. You can end up spending like 8 mana on turn 3 easily. And that means that guess what? Normally when you spend 8 mana on turn 3, you win a lot of games of Hearthstone. Just look at Druid.
Yeah, so even right now, Viper can coin out his Dark Glare, he can tap for 0, which will get him 2 mana back. He can then spend that 2 mana and then Raise Dead, which gets him 2 more mana back, which then allows him to play another Tour Guide that he'll get back off the Raise Dead, which will then discount his next hero power for 0. That was like the sum total of everything he could have done that turn. Like, this turn is strong, and it still was not the max he could have done in terms of raw tempo that turn.
But it does make sense because the Raised Dead would have only got him the Tour Guide, whereas even if this dies, the Raised Dead getting him Dark Glare back is not a bad thing either. So he was either going to get Candrath Dead and a Tour Guide, or Dark Glare and a Tour Guide after this turn, which is still more than okay.
Yep. So there you have it. Raised Dead now gives him back the Dark Glare and the Tour Guide that Raven was talking about. which means that Viper can continue to pop off over the coming turns. This is a guaranteed outcome. Dark Lair also being discounted by the camera thread that's already in play means that Tour Guide can come down immediately and start popping off right now.
Am I crazy for looking at Nightshade this turn?
Yes? Why do you want it?
Okay.
Why? I'm confused.
Because it can just be a 5/4 on board, and you can still just go with the Dark Lair next turn.
No, don't. It's still good.
I don't know. I guess this was reliant on the average tap. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was close.
Suppose, like, for me, if you Nightshade there, like, you rush it into a 1/1, no big deal. And yeah, you have a decent minion on board, but there's a 50-50 that your Nightshade then discards your Nightshade. And then you have no Nightshade matrons left. And then suddenly, if, like, Sorcerer's Apprentice plus Freeze or something comes down later on in the game, you just have no way to react to the board. That feels like a way you can lose. Like, this situation, for example, this feels like a way you can potentially lose if Firebrand swings the board.
There are some other direct removal tools, though, like we can see in hand there for Viper. So the deck does play some of the Soul Fragment with Soul Share, along with those Shadowlight Scholars, which is some nice damage from hand. Mm-hmm. So there are some options, but really what we're going to look at now is Viper pressing that live tap button probably a lot, because he'll want to start edging now towards Flesh Giants, mainly, and Disease Vultures to really power out some big boards.
Really? RDU just drops the Raz to contest. Okay. No, the more I look at it, the more it's fine. I think this remaining Ray of Frost that RDU has is probably just too valuable to be throwing out willy-nilly.
And also as well, that there's no actual sources of 1 damage in the deck, or even like less than 3, I think. So you could even argue that if it was a 5/1 into it and then 2 mana to deal 1 damage, it's still like an over trade, I guess, for the Raz.
The race of the giants is on. Flesh Giant for 5 in Viper's hand, Mana Giant for 6 in RDU's. The fact that this Ray of Frost is only a singular copy right now is incredibly annoying in terms of just potentially powerful turns for RDU.
Job done.
Yeah, I think this is the best solution. He needs tempo right now.
And it doesn't look like it's going to be coming to play this game. But one thing that's very interesting with this list as well is actually using the expired merchants to discard Flesh Giants.
Yep.
And then you get 2 back, because you can make turns where you drop like 3 Flesh Giants in 1 turn for 0 mana. And that is like such an insane amount of stats to drop on board. You can win games off the back of there, but you know it does have its downsides of then you're not doing it on your Hand of Gul'dan to draw a lot. So this deck isn't as maybe sort of paint by numbers as people might think it is, just looking at the initial list.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, that interaction is a little difficult to line up and pay off. Like, it's not necessarily hard to line up, but, you know, if your Flesh Giant's your most expensive card in hand, you probably haven't, like, been going nuts in terms of discounting it. So to, like, discard it with your merchant, then get it back, and then get them all down to 0 so that you can pop off with them at the end of the turn, like, that's kind of hard to line up a lot of the time, but it just kind of speaks to your point that that is a game plan that you can execute, and I'm sort of describing it as difficult, which is essentially exactly what you're saying.
Good job. Ooh, 50-50 on the 4. Okay, that was the better one.
Yep.
And I do think this was a tough play, because Viper could have just killed this 8/8. He could have used the Matron, rushed it in, killed off the Giant. But that would have sacrificed his own Flesh Giants, which is the issue, right? And that, I think, was an incredibly tough decision to make, because also as Warlock, you deal a lot of damage to yourself. And if you open up a Giant to just hit you in the face, that is like, what, 50%, nearly 50% of Viper's health? And now there's a Conjurer's.
Is that
Does
good?
he just take Ray of... Does he need it? What if Ray of Frost is just way better?
I know, that's my dilemma right now. Like, Combustion is actually a really good card as well. If he takes Conjurer's Calling here, he can't ping. There's a 5/1 on the board screaming at him to be pinged right now.
Jeez. I hate it when you get offered 3 good ones.
Yeah. This sends 8 face. And into this.
That's what I mean. That's why the trade into the Giant was tempting from Viper because he's just took 8 damage this turn. It's crazy.
Amazing. Objectively funny. Oh, do I want the Ray of Frost? No, just take the Combustion and play the Mana Cyclone. There you go, buddy. There's your Ray of Frost.
And now it's all just gone wrong. Probably the worst draw in his deck for a life tap at that point. There's been no vultures in this game, which again can generate too many minions in a pop-off turn for Mage to realistically deal with. And look at the sacrifices Viper has to make just to try and survive, and he can't keep life tapping at this point.
Let's try and end the game.
Is the day of 3-0s? That's my question. It's Roly Fireball.
This hasn't gone well. Yep, seems good. Yep, that one. Yep, sign me up. Get that down to 0. Seems powerful.
I mean, is it Trick Totem lethal? That's my question.
Lava
You could have had 2 Trick Totems.
Yeah.
2 Trick Totems.
Yeah, go face, ping. Trick Totem, Lava Burst, face, yeah. Miss lethal.
Easy. Oh, wait. Potion. I can just say it.
You never get baited by the potion, Raven. RDU, confirmed good Hearthstone player, does not get baited by the potion.
I think it has to be said, though, doesn't it?
I guess.
And now this is the issue, right? Viper doesn't have to pay, gets his free life tap, but it puts him to 6 and there's a Giant on board.
Yo, this Voidwalker's gonna carry.
That's the plan. And that is partly what Viper's been missing as well this game. A Soul Jailer, although you glance at it and think, oh, it's activation for Shadowlight.
Yeah.
The heal does do some work when you're life tapping a lot in this game, but
yeah.
That is not going to matter, as that is going to be the game. And RDU back-to-back 3-0 sweeps. Whew. We're on for a crazy day and maybe even a crazy weekend at this rate, Sol.
It's looking like it, yeah. And last hero standing can throw these things up. I literally made this up many years ago just because it made sense, and I've never verified it, nor have I ever seen anyone else verify it. But I said on cast many years ago that when you play Last Hero Standing, the majority of series end 3-0 or 3-2. And since then, it's just kind of become a thing that everyone says, and I'm pretty sure no one has ever checked whether it's true or not. But it certainly does seem, anecdotally, time after time, that Last Hero Standing is conducive to sweeps. If Game 2 goes wrong, you get swept. That's just kind of what ends up happening, because you've queued your counter queue, and it's gone wrong. And then at that point, you're probably going to end up getting 3-0'd in the series. Not the showing that Raven and Viper would have wanted for Zoo. I'm not going to do it, though. It's performed well for him. It's got him here. And again, I'm not by any means going all the way in on this deck. I've certainly seen it enough on ladder, lost to it enough on ladder. Gia just hit double Dark Glare every game for 10 games straight last night while we were testing, and absolutely hammered me as I was trying to figure out what you're supposed to do in the Priest matchup. So there's certainly something to it. And Viper overall is still positive with that deck, even after that loss. He's 6-4 overall. So I'm not going to make any statements based on that one game, but that is my fear with the deck overall. Is even if you hit the early power play, which there was with Dark Glare there for Viper, if it can get picked apart, does your deck do enough after that?
Right.
Essentially, remove Dark Glare from the equation. Is your deck a Hearthstone deck? That's my big question about it. And I think that still remains to be answered.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of exploration to do, but that was just that series, and we've got more coming right up, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.
Hey everyone, it's Gia back again with Mullet Over for Hearthstone Grandmasters 2020 Season 2 to kick off the Scala